If you followed any of these fluid mechanics laboratory videos or have actually had to use them in your assignments, you've noticed that the lab, to a large extent, is decently organized. And lab organization, whether it be a research lab, a teaching lab, or an industrial lab, is crucial in a successful laboratory. If you cannot, or if you're not organized, you'll spend all your time finding things, or in some cases, if they've gotten lost, in not finding things. And that is frequently overlooked, particularly in teaching labs and to a lesser extent research labs. So in order to organize things, you have to label them properly. And that's what the topic is today. Many of my students have complained about the age of the equipment, not just in this lab, but in some of the other labs. And that is a complicated subject that I'll leave for another time. But whether the equipment is new, old, but especially when it's being upgraded, it's important to label everything so that you can find it, or at least find out the components to go with it, especially when you're first using a lab and you're not really familiar with all the ins and outs of it. So with that in mind, we're going to use a labeler. But in this particular case, I'm going to use a very old labeler. Today we have labelers where you punch in a keyboard and it spits out a printed label and you peel and stick it. But back before those times, we had embossing labelers. And probably the best known of those are your Dymo labelers. I know in my family business we used those extensively during the 1970s and into the 1980s when these other types of labelers were not developed. So today I'm going to look at a labeler which I'm almost positive comes from that enterprise, and that is this Dymo Mark 6 labeler. And we're going to actually use it. You see that in many times graphic artists will reproduce in graphic format what was done in physical format years ago. And what I'm going to do is to show you how these embossers did their work and how they originally came out. So next time you see one in somebody's graphic arts or whatnot, you'll know where it came from. And also, to illustrate that in some cases, not all cases, I agree that the newer labelers definitely have their advantages and definitely have their merits. But in some cases, our labelers, of the old time did as good of a job as what we have now. And that's true with many things. When you have a simple task, many times the simple solution is the best. So let's get into it and look at this and see what's inside the box. And I'll give you an example of how it was used. I'm going to use the box as sort of a display case to show what's inside. First, we have the labeler itself. It's pretty elementary. It has top view, shows you where the tape goes through. You load the tape through this area back here. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. The tape feeds through here. There's a little ratchet that feeds. Here you set the two different tape widths. These were set up for either 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch wide. Down here is a control where you control whether your letters are widely spaced or narrowly spaced. You could have them either way. Here is the embossing wheel. Now the embossing wheel, I'm just going to take this off and show you how the embossing wheel is. The embossing wheel shows you all the letters that you're capable of. It's in all caps just like the telex. And then you've got a few additional characters. And on the bottom here, these teeth are actually the form of the letters. And they actually, when it works, it crunches them together and the tape's in the middle and you get the embossed image of the letter. And you rotate this around until it appears and then in the right place, and then you punch it. Now, you'll notice there's more than one embossing wheel, and I have more than these. This one is unique in a couple of respects. One of them, and it says it's kind of hard to read, but it says it's vertical. That means that in addition to the letters going, the tape basically reads out like most print on a page where it goes horizontally. It can also go up and down vertically. That was very useful when we would do notebooks and whatnot and loose leaf binders. Usually Vulcan used 19-hole loose leaf binders. Those are better in my opinion, the GBC system. But the other thing that's interesting about this is right here. You'll notice that there are more characters. That's because this particular wheel has a smaller font than the other wheel. In fact, I can compare the two and show you what I'm talking about. You'll notice that there are more characters on the wheel on the right than there are on the left. And that's because they have, that's because this has a smaller letters. Because it's smaller, you can put more on the wheel. The wheel's the same diameter. So with that in mind, you can actually have different characters and more characters on a wheel like this, than a wheel like this. And there's also wheels where you could have horizontal lettering with letters like it's just smaller font. So it's whatever you wanted to do. So that, in a nutshell, is how you do it. Now, in the back here, put these there, are your tapes. Over here on the left are your 1/4-inch tape, and they came in all kinds of decorator colors. And some people point out the existence of wood grain and that kind of thing, and those were very cool looking. And some of them were two-tone and that kind of thing. On the right here are your 3/8 tapes. Now there's two different blue tapes, and they're different because one of them has a shiny surface and one of them has a matte finish. And so therefore, between all of these options, you could do a lot of different things with these simply by changing out the kind of tape you used, the kind of wheel you used, and the width of the tape. So you had several options available to you with a Dymo labeler. Let me come back to this for a second and point out a few things. Here, they have brief instructions that tell you you must use genuine Dymo label tape, which sometimes is obviously hard to get now. And not only that, but also the fact that you have to consider the fact that some of the tape you buy has been around, pick you buy on clearance, has been around a long time, and as a result, the tape doesn't stick as well. It depends. Here is where the cartridge goes in, and I want to show you now how that works. We put the tape cartridge in right here, and we put the tape there. That's where the little ratchet is, and we put this down. Now the tricky part, and notice we also put the wheel back, and you notice eventually if you look through the hole above the 1/4-inch, you'll see. Now you see at this point we've gone through, so we're ready to go. So the tape is now loaded. Now let's, for example, do the label for the propeller experiment drawer. So we go. Do that. Now you go all the way. Notice now you have complete. Previously I was just doing half. And then E. R. Now to do a space, I do it another half step like that, and then I start again. Sometimes I lose. And then to get it out of the machine, you'll notice I do it up to about where this little line is there. Then I take this, the cutting, and I cut it, and I pull on it. One of the problems with older machines is that they tend to get worn. Cutting mechanisms get worn. It used to be that on a good condition Dymo labeler, you would actually be able, when you cut it, it would actually make a little tab, and the little tab could be easily peeled off. This machine is kind of a little old and long in the tooth, so it doesn't quite do that anymore. But in any event, that's basically how you make a Dymo tape. So now we've chosen this drawer in front of you. So I take this, it's cleverly going to peel it off like that. That's always a pain. And we put it right here. And we label this drawer propeller experiment. Might just do a little, if you do a little scan here, you'll see one of those labels over there. And you'll see another one of those labels over there. So I've been busy doing this for quite some time in this lab. So that in a nutshell is how the Dymo labeler worked. And for those of you old timers out there who enjoy seeing old technology, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope the people who have never seen this done before will also learn something from it. Like I said, you see these embossed labels on a lot of graphic art. But no matter what labeler you use, the important thing is if you're running a laboratory, the important thing is label stuff and get organized. And that will bring your maximum efficiency and utility to your lab work. So, until next video, thanks for watching and God bless.